the annual holiday shopping spree, which is virtual this year. And I'd like to ask Diane if you want to give us any updates and comments.
Thank you, Nancy. The only comment I want to make is you guys did a fabulous job. The children had an absolute ball. And in spite of it being on Zoom, you guys were also patient with them and got them to talk, and they felt very good about themselves. And they're really looking forward now to wrapping the presents and having dinner with all of you on the 10th. So thank you for those who financially supported this event. And thank you to those who physically were present at the event. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Can I add?
And Diane, you know, I was just thinking it would be great to have some pictures taken at the dinner on the 10th.
We plan to do that.
That we could share afterwards. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Can I add?
Yes, Gordon?
I was on a Zoom with the district governor just a little bit ago, and she apparently joined that as well, participated in the event, and she wanted me to express her pleasure and her enjoyment of that event, and also particularly a shout out to our president, Nancy McCready, who she thinks is doing a fine job.
Oh,
We'll let her know about it later, but that's what she thinks, Nancy.
Perception, you know, to coin a massacre an old phrase, perception is 9/10 of the law. So that's very kind. And I was very impressed that both our district governor, Bet Hall, and our district governor-elect, Giddy Javid, volunteered to participate this year. So I think it's very special. I thoroughly enjoyed talking to the little boy that I was paired up with, and I'm just so happy that, Diane, that you were able to come up with a way to make this work virtually and still make it special. And I believe from what you've told me, Phil has also done an amazing job organizing the dinner for the 10th. So you know, hats off to him, and Diane, especially to you, because I know coordinating 19 children and members, and it's a lot, but it seemed to have gone very smoothly. So
hey, can I set the record straight?
Yes.
Diane did 99.9% of the work on this. I simply got the dinner organized, but Diane is the one that really shoulders this whole project really on her shoulders.
I know that she has done a great deal, and I also wanted to acknowledge you for all that you've done to organize the dinner, because that's important to the kids too. So, you know, it shows me once again, this is a club with heart. And oh, here's Brian Whitney. Let me just let him in real quick. So we will hear more about that. And Carol has a special holiday concert coming up with Music Men's Minds for this Saturday. And she was telling us earlier during our social time how vastly this cause has expanded, and they now have the Philippines and Southeast Asia covered. It's really amazing. So, you know, I really encourage everyone who possibly can to attend the concert, which you don't have to leave home, and it's free. So what could be better than that? And we have an event coming up on the 17th, our annual holiday lunch meeting. And let me just mute him. Adele, would you like to say something about the holiday lunch?
Yes, I would love to thank the committee that put this event together. Again, 99% of it is Diane. Thank you, Diane. The other 99% for agreeing to put a program together, and for Terry White being our treasurer. And I will explain the roles in a second. The idea is to get us together through Zoom to share that regular hour that we do every week on Thursday, December 17. That's in 2 weeks. So it's not the next week, it's the following week, 12:30 to 1:30. We'll have a special time ahead of that. And what we'd like to do is have you participate by, as usual, but if you'd like to wear something fun, a hat or a mask or, a scarf, something that just this is how festive you want to become, or just as regular as you'd like to be, that's great. I'm going to wear a bow tie that John O'Keefe gave me.
You know how to tie it?
Yeah, I remember the bow ties that you gave me, so I'm going to choose a red one maybe, or a green. You gave me quite a number of them.
But can you tie it?
Yes, I can. You said
Good
just,
for you.
yeah,
Good for you.
I'll do that, and I'll try to impress you too. So it's on the 17th. On the 17th, we'll get together and have that type of fun. And Tom, our fearless past president, agreed to do a repeat of the Wheel of Fortune, just categories of questions, and we answered them. And as much as we had them for the handover party about 6-8 months ago. So thank you very much, Tom, for agreeing to do that. And I think the categories are going to be something fun that you'll come up with, undoubtedly.
Is there a special holiday I should concern myself about, or
Yeah,
just kidding?
how do you feel Christmas kind of thing,
It's already outlined.
Of course. You're so organized.
Yeah, and if you need any help, getting some questions and categories, I'm sure some of the group around this screen can give a hand and participate in that fun.
I've already got them.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. So the committee goes way beyond what 4 or 5 people. I think it's 40 or 50 people. Work of love. And what we'd like to do is also, if you have a fun background, I'm looking at Nat Reid's background. He's got something historic. I know that Goldfell has got now something iconic as well. So if you'd like to have something that just puts you in that festive mood, go ahead, play with that visual background. It comes from the video icon down on the left side, lower left side of your screen. So feel free to do that. One last comment, maybe two. Terry agreed to accept pledges that we voluntarily like to make. So if you'd like to do that on the chat, there's that chat button at the bottom of the screen. So during the 17th, the holiday lunch that we'll have, if you'd like to pledge, you can pledge your number or pledge that you will do a donation, and Terry would be only happy to do the billing and the appropriateness of the timing that we'd like to do it for. So it can be next year if you'd like it to be for next year's taxes, if you'd like to be instant, if you want to give it on somebody else's behalf, all of those are acceptable options that you'd like to exercise. And thank you so much, Terry, for agreeing to accommodate us on that front. So the chat is going to be the pledge. And thank you so much, Nancy, for making sure that this goes on track. And I hope it will be a successful event as usual. Thank you.
I'm sure it will. Thank you for organizing this, and we'll be talking more about it next week. I'm sure it will be delightful. Carol, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, President Nancy. Apropos of our musical event, our concert this Saturday at 2 p.m., the only way into the concert is through an Eventbrite link. So if I can possibly send you the official invitation, it will take you to Eventbrite, and the only link to take you to the concert.
Great, please do.
Thank you.
And we'll get that sent out.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay. Now we have, since it's the first meeting of the month, we have birthdays and anniversaries to acknowledge. Esther Leon Schwartz. It's funny, my gallery is covering up the dates. Esther Leon Schwartz's birthday is on the 5th. Jim Collins' birthday is on December 20th, which is also my brother's birthday. Mark Rogo, happy almost birthday on December 22nd. And Scott Whittle was born on Christmas, poor guy. I say poor guy because the kids that I knew growing up who had birthdays around Christmas really got shortchanged on the gift front. But anyway, it's, it better to have been born than not, right? And for our December wedding anniversary is Carol and Kurt Smith on December 18th. Happy anniversary to both of you. And we have a number of club anniversaries. The first three occurred on December 1st, Jim Crane, Ruse Bay, Aaron Donahue, and Ed Jackson's birthday is next Thursday, 37 years. That's wonderful. And Allie, who is in the midst of finals right now and not able to be here today, has her 13th anniversary on December 13th. There's a symmetry there.
Lucky you.
And, and with that, Tom, I'd like to ask you to introduce our speaker.
Will do.
Thank you.
To be honest, I have an avid interest in things historical, shall we say. I signed up as a history major my junior year in college, but that lasted exactly one day when a friend informed me that the accounting majors made the most money upon entering the business world. So I switched. So when Nat Reid came to our club early last year, I'd never heard of Benjamin Davis Wilson, better known as Don Benito Wilson. So after listening to Nat Reid talk about this bigger than life man, I bought and read his book about Don Benito, From Mountain Man to Mayor. I was blown away with the history and impact Don Benito had on Southern California. Having grown up in Pasadena, I was very familiar with Mount Wilson, Lacey Park, Alhambra, San Marino, and living on the west side, the streets of Sepulveda and Pico, and the cities of Beverly Hills, Culver City, and numerous other landmarks, all of which were influenced by Don Benito Wilson. And did you know that the General George Patton of World War II fame was Don Benito's grandson? Well, I will go no further because Nat Reid's extensive research has brought to life Don Benito's historical significance of Los Angeles and the surrounding areas. And I will let him tell you about it. Nat earned a degree in history from Austin College, is the author of 5 books, has been published in the Wall Street Journal, LA Times, Saturday Evening Post, Reader's Digest, and numerous other publications. He's a retired Navy captain, a former LAPD reserve cop who worked undercover vice in Hollywood and gang suppression in South LA. He is the principal of the Pasadena Public Relations Agency, Reid Communications. Having read the book, I realized that Nat could not possibly have told us everything about the amazing Don Benito Wilson. So, as Paul Harvey used to say, here is the rest of the story. Please welcome Nat Reid.
Oh, thank you, Tom. Tom was remembering the talk I gave in February, I think maybe of this year. Seems like so long ago. And he said, you talked about the man, but how about talking about the city, Los Angeles? What was the city like? And I want to start by saying that you all have been victims of a giant myth. Fake news didn't ever happen. And that was perpetrated from your youth by Hollywood. Hollywood portrayed the cow towns in the West as violent places with gunplay, lots of murders. And it's absolutely not true. Place like Dodge City, over a period of 10 years, had a murder, an average of 1.5 murders per year. Tombstone The most murders it ever had in a year was 5, and 3 of those were at the famous OK Corral fight. Deadwood, South Dakota. Go down the list of these towns that have become so famous because of Hollywood. They were not violent. There was virtually no gunplay. And why was that? Because there was very vigorous gun control in those days. And the marshal accepted your guns when you came into town, put them in his safe, and he kept them until you left town. There was, however, one town that was a Wild West town. Lots of gunplay, lots of murders. In fact, the saying in those days was there was a murder a day in this Wild West town. And that town was Los Angeles. Los Angeles was the wildest town in this country then or ever. Had the most murders per capita in that day or any. The murder rate in the 1850s in Los Angeles became an American city in 1850. And during that first decade, the murder rate in Los Angeles was 1,000 times what it is today. Or to put it another way, for those of you who passed math in school, Los Angeles County had 2,500, population of say 2,500. Today it's 10 million. Okay, 2,500, 10 million. The number of murders each year is about the same.
Holy God, that's wild. Woo. That's wild.
So that was the Los Angeles of that day. Why was it so dangerous? Because of the gold rush. With the news of the gold rush, the dregs from all over the world showed up there. People with a decent job, people with a future, people happy with their lives didn't go to the gold fields. It was the down and outs that had found no way to make a decent living that came there to strike it rich. Most of them didn't. And so they began to drift over to San Francisco, to the city, to take up a life of crime. And there was a very strong vigilante committee in San Francisco, and they hung them as soon as they came to town. Very professional about that. And so they wandered south to Los Angeles, which was very spread out. They could knock off one farm after another, isolated farms. There was no strong city government. There was no strong police force. And so that's why the crime rate here was so spectacular. The police chief, the first police chief and his deputy were killed in a gunfight with each other. They were arguing about who gets the reward for somebody that they had arrested together. The second sheriff and almost all of his posse were killed in a shootout. This was Sheriff Barton, and even as wild as Los Angeles was, this incident provoked the city more than anything that had ever happened. A gang of about 100 bad guys swept into the city, wreaking havoc. They found a German man who was cooking his dinner. They swept in, killed him, put his body on the table, and ate his dinner around his body.
Oh my God.
This is how repugnant these people were. So the sheriff went after them, the sheriff and 5 deputies against 100 armed men. And what do you think happened? Very, very foolish to have taken on those odds. The sheriff was killed. 3 of his deputies were killed. 2 of them were able to get back to Los Angeles and say what happened. And the town rallied like it never had before. It was put under martial law and formed 2 committees of armed men. One to go into the countryside in Los Angeles County and find anybody that didn't seem to belong there. And the other to go after this gang of 100. In charge of that posse was Andres Pico. He had been the general leading the Mexican troops against the Americans in the Mexican War. And he took out after them, found 2 of their leaders and hung them on the spot just so that they didn't slow the posse down, and went on hunting. They found another one, chased him into a field, a large field with plants over his head. So he completely disappeared. Once he went into that, there was no finding him. So General Pico simply set the field on fire. Others were brought into town as the posse found them, or as the force in Los Angeles found them. And as they did, a ritual was repeated. The committee was called together. The same man was chair of the committee each time. And as one of the bad guys was brought into Los Angeles, the committee would assemble and he would say, does anybody have any business before the committee? And somebody would raise their hand and say, yes, I make a motion that the guy that was just brought into town be hanged. The chairman would say, all right, is there a second to that motion? Somebody else would say, I second that motion. They voted, left the room, went across the street to the jail, dragged the guy out, and lynched him. The most, I think, the most spectacular story of this day of non-judicial vengeance was when a guy named David Brown was brought into town, accused of killing his best friend, shooting his best friend. So the group got together, and the mayor of the city, his name was Stephen Foster, not the composer, but the same name. Mayor Stephen Foster, the Eric Garcetti of Los Angeles, heard that the meeting was being held, and he raced there to the room. I told this story in February, but I'll tell it with more detail today. Raced to the meeting, jumped up onto the table in the middle of the men. Can you see this in a movie? They're doing their business. He runs in, he jumps up on the table. He's looking down at them. He says, boys, we've got to become civil here. We can't just keep taking the law into our own hands and doing whatever we want. We're a growing city. We have some sophistication here, and we need to follow the process. Now, he said, the sheriff has already convened a jury. That jury's going to find him guilty. You know they will. The judge is going to sentence him to hang. You know he will. So let's let justice take its course. The man says, no, no way. If that happened, some attorney would go to the appeals court, get him off on a technicality, and Judge Lynch, he don't make those mistakes. And he said, boys, I understand. He said, if that were to happen, he said, I'd lead you myself, but it ain't gonna happen. So let's let justice take its course. So they backed down. They agreed to let him try this. The jury met, found him guilty. The judge sentenced him to hang. 2 attorneys rode to the appeals court, got him off on a technicality. The mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti, Stephen Foster, resigned his post as mayor, called the men together, led them across the street, overpowered the jailer, dragged him out, put him under their own custody, and scheduled a hanging for the next day. 2 days later, a special election was held in Los Angeles for the vacant spot. Stephen Foster was reelected as mayor. Now, it has another strange turn. The newspaper thought this was a very interesting case and was going to put this on the front page of the paper. The problem was the steamer sailed in the morning from the port, Wilmington, and it carried the papers to San Francisco, where they were sold for the week. And the hanging wasn't until the afternoon. And so the editor wrote the whole story in the past tense of the hanging that had not yet happened, put it in the paper, and was able to get to the ship in time to get them on to go to San Francisco. As a result, they were able to show the convicted man the newspaper account of his hanging. So David Brown said, I don't disagree that I should be hanged. You say that I murdered my best friend. I don't remember that, but I probably did. I was dead drunk at the time. And so he said, I just have one thing to say, one complaint though. He said, I don't want to be hung by a bunch of greasers. And by that he meant Mexicans. So 2 white guys stepped up on the gallows and says, no problem, Mr. Brown. We'll take it ourselves. And did. And that was the strange story of David Brown. In 1871, the most heinous act in Los Angeles history took place. There were 2 tongs or gangs in Chinatown, 2 competing criminal gangs. One of them, and they got into a dispute that lasted more than a day, went into a second day. One of them accused the other of having kidnapped a young woman to put her into prostitution. Now, this was something that happened in Chinatown between the 2 tongs. So they were, the one tong that had been wronged was extremely upset with the tong that had done this. And there was a gunfight that erupted. The police chief, or no, a policeman, a white policeman, happened upon it and was shot and killed. And as he interrupted this, also a white bystander was shot and killed. And the word went out to the city that the Chinese had killed a white policeman and killed a white bystander, and a mob of about 500 men showed up and began lynching Chinese. And before they were over, they had before it was done, they had lynched between 17 and 20 Chinese. Disgraceful, the most disgraceful thing that has ever happened in Los Angeles, I think. The Chinatown was along Calle de los Negros, which was the most dangerous block in the most dangerous city in the country ever. It was a street that ran diagonally from the southeast corner of the plaza, southeast. And on that street were gambling dens, houses of prostitution, taverns. When someone was found cheating in one of those gambling dens, they simply shot him, threw his body out the door, and kept the game going, not to be discovered until the next day. A terrible place and a terrible name, Calle de los Negros, translated into English, and forgive me for this, but I'm a historian, and in the act of accuracy, I have to tell you that its name over the years after it became American was Nigger Alley. This most heinous series of hangings there of Chinese took place there. One of the men was hung. Mostly they were hanged after they were killed. One man was hanged without his trousers and with a finger cut off. Trousers were missing because they wanted to take his wallet. Finger was cut off to take his diamond ring. The people who were involved in that were arrested, as many of them as could be identified. Arrested, tried, and you know the answer. They were all let off. The legal system was interesting in those days, interesting to say the least. Misdemeanors and that kind of crime were taken care of by the official courts. And as I mentioned, capital cases went to the court of Judge Lynch. The court of Benjamin Hayes was sometimes suspended for the day because Judge Hayes was dead drunk. Judge Dryden, in his courtroom one day, a gunfight erupted between the opposing attorneys. The judge jumped into his chamber yelling, "Shoot away, damn you, and to hell with all of you." Judge Hayes, that I mentioned just before, once was confronted by a dissatisfied litigant who shot the judge at point blank range. The bullet went through his hat, but missed his head somehow. Then there was the district attorney, and the district attorney was not a full-time job in those days. He continued to handle his own clients and then put on the hat of the district attorney when he needed to. But this was the second district attorney, and one of his clients was a criminal defendant, and he was the district attorney. So he went to court with his client and a friend who was an attorney, and he commissioned deputized his friend to be the acting district attorney while he represented the criminal defendant and then took the job back. The there were a lot of offices to fill, government offices, and a sparse population. And so able-bodied, I mean, people capable of that kind of leadership were elected to two offices simultaneously, one in the county and one in the city. The mayor of the city of Los Angeles was also the coroner of the county of Los Angeles. Don Benito Wilson, my guy, was the county clerk who set up American government in Los Angeles, but he was also on the Los Angeles City Council and was the second mayor of the city. The county council was also the city attorney. The county and the city got into a squabble over some land matter, and he represented both sides. So, well, the violence brought here by the riffraff had an effect on the whole city, and because there were so many shootings, then it became more common for everyone to settle their grievance by gunfire. The richest man in the city, Abel Stearns, held a party and invited the best people in the city there. But there were a lot of people who resented the fact that they weren't invited, that he didn't simply unlock the gates and invite everybody in. They became very noisy, setting off firecrackers. They found an old Army cannon and set it off there outside his place. A gunfight ensued. A judge shot a doctor who was trying to to crash the party. An Army colonel shot another intruder. The cases went to trial. The judge in the case let off the other judge as self-defense, and no one was charged with anything from that. A Baptist minister said that he was going to preach in El Monte. The boys in those days, it was called the Monte. The boys in the Monte didn't like the idea of a prayer meeting being held in their city, and they told the minister that. So he did preach, but he brought to the religious service his Bible and his revolver. He put those both on the lectern in front of him, and his two sons, armed to the teeth, stood next to him while he preached that. It was 12 years as an American city before any Protestant church put down roots in this wild, wild West city. So that's Tom. That's the bookend. We talked about the man and the other men involved in early Los Angeles history before. And here's a little bit about how bizarre and how dangerous this city was in those days. It's in the book, Don Benito Wilson, from Mountain Man to Mayor, which is on the screen behind me. I sold books when I was here before. The intent was that I would sell books again today. A little hard to sign them and pass them over to you. But the cost of that book is with tax and shipping is $30, and there's a special Westwood Rotary price, half price. Tom talked me into half price, $15. And if you haven't read it and want to, let me know, and it's yours for $15, including tax and shipping. Thank you so much for the invitation. You have a great club. I very much enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. Just a second. Nat, thank you for being here. And if you want to send Tom or me the link where people can order your book, I'll be happy to send it out to the club. And it's a fascinating perspective that you shared with us today. I know we have questions for you. Before we move into questions, again, I want to thank you for your time and your really interesting stories and or accounts, because they're not fictional, obviously. And in your honor, we will be making a donation to the Westwood Public Library as well. And I'm sure that we'll have several members who will want, including me, who will want to order your book. Oh, and by the way, before I call on John, who has his hand up, if Chris Bradford is still here, I apologize. I was told I missed your birthday. I am so sorry. Happy birthday yesterday, and I'll make sure to make up for that next week. Okay, John.
Yes, Nat, that was a terrific talk. That street in Chinatown, the most dangerous street, was that in where Chinatown is right now? And what street would it be right now if you wanted to go on that street?
Take the 101 freeway as it goes by, sort of by Union Station.
I know where that is.
You will be passing right over it.
Right.
It was buried by the freeway.
I
Chinatown, that Chinatown was displaced when the city wanted to build a train station that served all three railroads here. So they displaced the Chinese there. And then they were displaced once again to where Chinatown is today, along whatever that is, Broadway or
Broadway, yeah.
Broadway.
Yes.
So anyway, that's where Calle de los Negros was.
I see. Okay. Thank you, Nat.
Do we have other questions? Well, Nat, I really want to thank you again for your time and your fascinating information. And a number of us will look forward to reading your book.
Yeah, Nat,
Yes.
it's going to provide me a lot of opportunities to tell my grandchildren about what LA was like when Tom Barron was living here.
Now, John, don't do that.
No, I
I'm from
probably
Chicago. I'm from Chicago. That
should've-
was a much safer city.
I probably should have mentioned somewhere along the way that Don Benito Wilson owned Westwood. He
Ooh.
owned UCLA, Westwood. It was Rancho de San Jose de Buenos Aires. And he bought it for he bought half interest in that rancho for $662.75. He bought out the other half for $1,600. So for about $2,300, he owned all of that. He bought Beverly Hills next door, Rodeo de las Aguas, for $4,000.
Ooh.
On UCLA at Westwood, he raised cattle, sent them to the gold country, and made a fortune from Westwood. On Beverly Hills, he grew wheat. That was a disaster, and he had to sell that. The ranchers next door knocked down his fence to use for lumber, and then invited their cattle in to eat the wheat. But his purchase of $4,000 for Beverly Hills has increased over the years to $10 million, the value of what he bought for $4,000 in 1860. Anyway, thanks again.
Nat, that, when you say $10 million, you don't,
10
not really,
million times.
times, right?
How many
10
times?
million times, yeah. 10
10
million
million
times
times.
the value of $4,000.
Oh, yeah, that meant, yeah,
Yeah,
that's a pretty good investment.
yeah.
Well, that's perspective for you.
John?
Let me
Well,
just
thank
add
you
one thing,
again.
Nancy, if I might.
Oh, go ahead. Sure.
When I read that book, there's so many fascinating details in there about the LA area and the influence by Don Benito. Believe me, Bologna Creek, etc. All these areas and landmarks and things like that were influenced by this single man. It's amazing what he did and how much we have to gain from an insight of a historical perspective just through this book. So I tell you, I would encourage everybody to take a look at this from a history
a buyer.
standpoint. A lot there.
That's great. That's great.
I'm a buyer.
Yeah, I want to read it as well.
Tom, I tell people, when you read this book, I guarantee that page after page after page after page, you will say, I can't believe I never heard of this guy. He is so important. Yeah.
I always thought Mount Wilson was named after Woodrow Wilson, and I lived in
Yeah.
Pasadena, and I never knew this guy.
Well, that would be an obvious conclusion. So interesting. Well, I look forward to reading it too. Thank you again. Great to see you all. We'll be back here same time next Thursday, December 10th. Have a wonderful, safe, and healthy week in the meantime.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Nat.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.